Hello everyone, welcome back. It's been a month. I've been away for a month from YouTube. I thought it was actually much longer. It felt much longer. The last video blew up, 80,000 views. Bit of hate thrown in there for good measure, but a lot of good comments as well. That was a bit rushed, so we're gonna learn from that video. I'm definitely gonna do more on that topic. But in the last month, what's been happening? The off season's continued. Nothing too much has changed in terms of that. Just been continually pushing. I've struggled to get my body weight much higher. I'm not sure what I was weighing in that last video, but I'm still around the 125, 127 mark. Haven't managed to breach 130 yet. We've got effectively the rest of February left in the off season, or at least in the blast phase of the off season. And then it's going to be a cruise phase, and then prep will begin in May. So obviously we can talk a little bit more about that in another video. But we've launched the Off the Cuff podcast, which has been incredible. So we're 6 episodes in now. I think I probably was filming that by the time that last video went out, but response has been amazing. If you've not seen that, I should probably put a little card on here as well, so I'll put one onto that channel, so you can go and check out myself, Josh and Tom discussing all things, not just bodybuilding and fitness, but sort of gen pop stuff as well, which has been really good. Very exciting, a bit of a therapy session for us 3 boys during the week, which we look forward to. But back to this channel. So today we're going to be talking about how to train your weaknesses. Who needs to train their weaknesses, how to train them, how to get the most out of them, how to program if you're trying to bring up a weakness, and then what I'm doing about it as well. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Okay, so the first point, as I mentioned just then, is going to be about kind of who needs to think about training their weaknesses, or how you might get an idea of what is a weakness on your physique. I'm 10 years into training now, and it's only really in the last probably 2 to 3 years that I've really started to worry about specialization blocks for any part of my physique. The bottom line is, for most people, I'd say particularly competitors, but anyone, like, you probably just want to get bigger in general. Whether you're just like a lifestyle person, you just want to have a better physique in general, a nice, more balanced physique. There's probably not a lot that you need to worry about when it comes to like, oh, I need to bring up this or that. I think it's a pretty common misconception, and actually, if you just improve everywhere, your physique will improve everywhere. However, if you have started to spot that maybe some areas are lagging behind others, so maybe you notice that your lats aren't quite as developed as your chest, or your hamstrings aren't quite as developed as your quads, or just your lower body in general, then there's quite a few things we can deploy to start to think about how we bias those parts of the body and how we bring them up, maybe in line with other parts of your physique, or just in terms of creating a more balanced physique. I think particularly if you're a competitor and you've competed a few times, you've probably had feedback from judges, or you should be getting feedback from judges on, okay, you need a more developed upper chest, is a classic one, or you need more delt, or you need more arms. And it does become quite apparent after a number of shows, which obviously that's kind of where I'm at now. So as I look to transition into classic physique, I know what areas I need to improve on based on my checking pictures, based on looking at, you know, who I'm going to be potentially competing against, and obviously having conversations with my coach and with people that watch me compete, so judges, my peers as well. So I'd say if you can see some really clear lagging areas in your physique, then maybe you want to start to think about training your weaknesses a little more, or at least biasing so that they catch up with the rest of your body. So that is who needs to worry about it. So a prerequisite for training any of your body parts, but particularly ones that maybe you think are not improving as fast as others, would be execution and intensity. So that is kind of the prerequisite for any body part. But what you'll notice is that you might connect with one body part better than another, right? Some people really struggle to connect with their lats. Some people really struggle to connect with their triceps or their biceps. And the first thing you want to look at is how are you executing those movements. So if you're going in and you feel like you're having really good sessions on one body part, but let's say you don't connect very well with your lats, you don't feel a great pump in your lats when you're training them, they're not sore when you finish, there are probably a few indicators that maybe your execution on that movement isn't quite as good. So the first thing I would do is just run it back and just take a look at how you're performing those movements, film those movements, send them to a coach, send them to a friend, watch them back yourself, and have a little, kind of hold yourself accountable in terms of like, am I really doing this movement to the best of my ability? Are you perhaps chasing too much weight on the bar before you've nailed the execution? So these are all things to think about. The second kind of point on that, I guess, point 2.2 would be intensity. So quite often, some body parts are going to be harder to train than others, or they don't feel quite as nice. So I'm talking quads maybe. Are you shying away from intensity on those body parts? Is there a reason why you're not quite training those body parts as hard as you should? Because at the end of the day, if you're either not executing them properly or you're not training with enough intensity, they're going to lag. And I think this is particularly obvious when it comes to maybe certain body parts like abs or calves. People kind of leave them to the end, or they tag them on, or maybe they just miss them off, when really, if that's a weakness, it needs to be prioritized and put maybe to the start, or at least you need to be making sure that you're sort of mentally and physically fresh to hit that body part before you do it. So that would be point 2 of the second point. Okay, number 3 would be around frequency. So when it comes to various training splits, what you'll find is that some of them are quite balanced. So for example, let's take a bro split, which to be fair, the industry is kind of slowing down a little bit on now. I don't see it as much. But let's say you've got a strong chest, weak delts, a strong back, weak legs. If your delts are lagging behind the rest of your body, then it makes sense to increase the volume on that body part. And what that might look like is maybe moving to like a push-pull legs, or an upper-lower split, or even just a split that doesn't fit into any of those categories. So my split now, for example, it's not a push-pull legs, it's not upper-lower, it's none of those. It's just made for me because of the weaknesses that I have and the areas that I need to improve. So it's definitely worth looking into, okay, if my delts are weak, where can I fit them in? Like, can I fit them in twice a week, maybe 3 times a week? There's no right or wrong number on how many days a week you should hit a body part or how many sets per week you should do. It's all going to come down to recoverability and the intensity of your training. So what I mean by that is, for me, it's my hamstrings that are weak, which we'll come on to more in a minute. I'm trying to hit them as many times as I can throughout the week with good intensity, with good execution, with different movements, so that I can give them that stimulus as many times a week across the week as possible, as long as they can recover to hit it, in terms of the next session. And what that means is over the weeks, those numbers are going to add up. So I always remember really kind of like a poignant post from JP. He wrote it years ago. And he was basically talking about the weaknesses or the weakness of the negative of a bro split. And he was saying to his followers, like, your mate's hitting his legs once a week. Across the year, that's 52 times. If you start hitting them twice or even 3 times a week, you're going to hit your legs 104 times or 156 times across the week, across the year. So whose legs are going to grow more? It's a pretty obvious question. Unless you're training like an absolute pansy, it's probably going to be you. So I think that makes a lot of sense. It's kind of common sense. It's entirely logical. So what we want to think about is hitting that weaker body part more times than the other parts of your body across the week if you possibly can. As I say, the kind of overarching theme of that is there's not a right or wrong number. It's going to be different for everyone. Once you have execution intensity nailed down, it's going to be about just working out how many sets can I do. You don't want to be hitting a body part on a Monday and then hitting it again on a Wednesday if it still hurts. So that's where it comes to, you got to look at kind of bite-sized pieces of volume, if that makes sense. So that would be point 3, which is frequency. Cool. So point 4 is going to be about where do you want to place those body parts within your plan. So we've spoken about how many times a week to hit them. We've spoken about, like, are you hitting them with good quality? The next thing would be about sort of prioritizing them within your split. So what I mean by that is, let's say you're doing push-pull legs. If it's your hamstrings that are weak, there's no point putting them at the end of all your leg sessions, because quad movements in particular, like any squat pattern, even leg extensions, leg press, they're all going to be really taxing, which means when you come to the hamstrings at the end of the session, your mental focus has probably dipped off, your physical fatigue has definitely picked up, and to be honest, those two things together, they're going to lead to some pretty poor quality training when you get to the end of that session, particularly if you're maybe a less skilled lifter and you don't stay quite as locked in throughout the session. So what I would say about that is make sure that you prioritize them within your session. So for example, on the days where I'm hitting my hamstrings, they're going to be at the start of the session for at least 2 of the sessions that I do. On the lower day, obviously we still have to prioritize the legs a little bit in terms of quads, so they might come a bit further down, but there are going to be some movements that are going to be pushed right to the start of the session so that I hit them when I'm fresh, which means, as I said, high intensity, high quality, high focus. All those things are going to matter when you're trying to grow your weaknesses. And I think, as I said earlier, a classic example of this would be like calves. So calves are a perfect example because they're not very taxing. They're a weakness of mine. They need improving. So why don't we just put them right at the start of the session? They're not going to take away from anything after, unlikely, but they're definitely going to add a lot to them, if that makes sense. So it's about making those decisions within your actual training days and then in the wider training split as well. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to talk about is how I'm attacking it. So my hamstrings, particularly if I'm moving on to classic physique, they're going to need a lot more attention. I don't know if they're overly weak right now, but they're certainly not strong. they probably get a bit swamped by like my quads, for example. So when I turn to the side in some of those side shots, there needs to be some level of hamstring development there, or at least more so than there is currently, which is why this next block, as we go into the sort of final stages of the off season, is really going to be prioritizing hamstring. So my personal split right now is Monday, hams and upper back, which was yesterday. Today is push, so just one push day across the week. We've then got hams and pull, so again, hams at the start of the session. We've then got a rest on Thursday. We've then got Friday lower, which begins with adductors and surprise, surprise, hamstring curl, and then ends with quads. And then the last day of the week on Saturday is upper, and then it's a rest. So as you can see, 3 days it's basically one day on, 1 day off in terms of my hamstrings. They are placed at the start of the session, so I can hit them when I'm fresh. They're all different movements across the week again. So we want to be making sure that we're training the muscle across all its different lengths, right? So we want to make sure it's challenging the lengthened range, and the mid range, and the shortened range. And we also want to make sure that we can hit it fresh the next time. So that is how my hamstrings in particular are set up. The next weakness or area that needs more development is my lats and mid back. So trying to build that sort of upper line width and thickness in the rear, but also the front shots. So lats are coming in at 9 sets a week and mid back at 8 sets a week. So as you can see, these are the most like the highest volume movements or the highest volume body parts across the week. So they've been dosed with the maximum amount of volume that I can recover from. And obviously that is that's like an ongoing conversation, one that you need to be having with yourself or your coach. So as I go through this is obviously the first week I'm going to do it. I will know on Wednesday when I hit my hamstrings again if I'm at 100% and ready to hit them again. And then I'll know again on Friday how they feel, and can I realistically keep doing that week after week after week? Do I need to up the volume or bring it down? In terms of the next body part, as I said, the lats and mid back. So as you just heard, hams and upper back on Monday. They'll get hit again on Wednesday in pull, hams and pull, and then they'll get hit again on Saturday in upper, which again is like a pull focused upper day. So that is how I am going about hitting my weaknesses, and that would be my 5 steps to improving your body parts that you think are weak. So a quick recap then. So number 1 is who needs to think about training weaknesses. Ask yourself all the questions I did to you at the start. Number 2, execution and intensity. So that kind of prerequisite with, if you've got a weak body part, just really challenge yourself. Are you training it as good as you should be anyway, before you start worrying about laying on more movements? Number 3, frequency. Does more equal better? It does, up until a point whereby you can no longer recover or hit those body parts effectively. Number 4, where to place them in your plan. So how do you prioritize those movements within your specific days and as a week as a whole? And then number 5, just a quick talk through of how I'm addressing my weaknesses, which are hamstrings, upper back and mid back. I hope that was helpful. If you did like the video, obviously like, comment, subscribe. I'm going to keep these videos coming now, so we're going to try and be in with 1 a week with Andy behind the lens as Gigi's left. Yeah, look forward to seeing you in the next one. So peace out.